I love Burn the Haystack because I'm a deep thinker and I like to challenge old traditions to make way for a brighter future. That's also why I chose to get my degree from Avondale University College. With a thriving community of believers, I was able to kickstart my career and grow my faith at the same time. Business, arts, teaching, nursing, or ministry. Called to make a difference? Called to be at Avondale.
Welcome back to Burn the Haystack with Josh and Jesse.
I'm Jesse.
And I'm Josh.
And this is a show all about saving the best and burning the rest.
Sorry, if you guys are watching the video, Jesse is smiling so intensely. Like, I don't know.
I've got
how
to
your
smile.
face is.
I got to smile.
You got to smile before you press record. So, pretty good life hack, everybody. Before you do anything, smile.
Smile. You know, I once, when you got married, Josh, on your wedding day.
Oh, yeah, that one time at band camp. No. Did you end up smiling so much that your face started to hurt? Do you remember that, or do you not remember? If you don't remember it, it probably didn't happen. Well, it's kind of okay. It's kind of awkward, but not with my wedding day. Oh, because our wedding day was cut short a little bit. Do you remember?
That is true. That is true.
Story.
Yeah.
But I mean, remembering. I remember. My face did hurt by the end of that. But more so at a friend's wedding where the first time I was a groomsman at my friend's wedding and I had to do all the photos and everything.
Pose a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. And they had like a really long photo shoot as well. So my face was like really hurting on that one. Whereas my one, we didn't have as long a photo shoot, obviously.
Yeah.
Because of, yeah.
No, I just have this distinct memory of my wedding, and towards the end of the night, I was like, why does my face hurt so much? And then every time I smiled, it hurt more. I was like, oh, it's because I've been posing so much. I don't like this. And I decided to stop smiling, and I haven't smiled ever since.
I refuse to smile.
I refuse. No, it's cool.
But speaking of smiling,
are you wanting me to jump in and to segue for you after you set me up with
help.
a really... speaking of smiling, welcome to Burn the Haystack, everybody, where everybody smiles because this is the podcast of joy and fun and celebration.
I got a good segue. I got a better one.
Cool.
Speaking of smiling,
yes,
a time of year that makes a lot of children smile a lot is Halloween.
Yes. You know what? It doesn't just make children smile. It makes dentists smile everywhere because dental bills go up after Halloween.
True. Is that actually
probably
factual? Probably true. Yeah. My wider family, like my nieces and nephews, love Halloween. Yeah, man. They dress up every year. They decorate, do little jack-o'-lanterns.
Are they your wider family because they eat so much candy at Halloween? It makes them whiter?
No, they're not. They're very active.
Bad joke.
No, but they love it. And yeah, I love seeing them. I've never really celebrated Halloween. I don't think we talked about Halloween like 2 years ago.
It was 2 years. We didn't do this last year. I don't know why we didn't do it last year.
No, I thought it was meant to be an annual thing.
It was.
We forgot about it last year.
We just kind of forgot about Halloween, which is funny. It was funny because when we first started doing the Halloween stuff, when we decided to do the Halloween episode, I think all the Adventist podcasts were like, oh, let's do Halloween and let's talk about how Halloween is not Christian or whatever, or like is it controversial? And then we were like, let's just do something ridiculous. And so we did. We did a celebration or a bit of a riff on All Hallows Eve, celebrating, sort of doing a riff on the whole idea of celebrating the saints and the champions, the men and the women who have gone before us in the faith of Jesus Christ and who have set the way for modern Christianity. And we remembered a whole bunch of people who we thought were quite inspiring And so we decided that we would do it once again. So maybe it's going to be a, I don't know, biannual event.
We'll try and make it an annual thing. I don't know. We'll try. See how we end up next year. If we forget about it next year, just remind us. We'll do it a little bit late. I don't know.
Please do.
But no, this year we remembered, so we're doing it. So if you want to go back, the episode was called Taking the Spookiness Out of Spooktober.
Maybe this is going to be like taking the spookiness out of Spooktober 2. Like maybe this can be like Treehouse of Horror, you know, like every year it's Treehouse of Horror 2, 3, 17.
Oh yeah, that Simpsons special.
The Simpsons thing.
Treehouse of Horror, yeah. That was creepy. I never liked those. They were scary. It was too spooky for me.
Too spooky for you, but that's okay. Today is not going to be spooky. Today is going to be special. It is going to be fun.
Spooktacular.
Spectacular. We really have a way with words.
We are linguists.
You mispronounced the word linguist.
Right?
Okay.
That's the joke. Okay.
I know everybody listens to Burn the Haystack for our brilliant banter, but I think we should probably get into it at some point, eh?
Well, yeah. In the last time, Jesse made a brilliant call that often Halloween is just about spooky vegetables, which talking about like the jack-o'-lanterns and turnips and all that kind of thing. But I guess we're trying to find the beauty in it. Obviously, if you want to hear the whole conversation, go back. We're not going to explain it all again. So what we're doing, we're going to do the same thing we did last time. We've each got 3 people who've been heroes of our faith.
Yep.
We haven't shared the list prior, so we may get a double up. Who knows?
I'm really hoping that we get a double up because I think that would be fun and awkward and hilarious.
We might. I don't know. I've got one that I'm like, oh man, it could happen.
Can I just ask you right off the bat, Josh, how many Seventh-day Adventists are on your list?
1.
Okay, I've got 1 too.
Oh, okay. We did the same thing last time.
Yes, we did. I think we kind of unintentionally did that. I think we both felt, we should probably put an SDA on the list. And I had Joseph Bates, or did you have Joseph Bates?
You had Joseph Bates.
And then who did you have?
My great auntie Audrey.
That's right. So you subverted that a little bit. It's not sort of like a historical Adventist character. It's somebody who was very special and impactful to you specifically.
Yeah, to my family.
To your family.
So it's still Adventist, but does... Well, and I think that's part of this too. I mean, I think that's probably the difference with like maybe the traditional Catholic idea of remembering saints is that they're very... They probably have to be more well known, but this is more about remembering anybody who's been taking a time in our year where we actually look back, remember people who've been impactful on our faith journey who are no longer with us. And whether it's your family or whether it's worldwide or whatever.
And there are some people on this list who probably have impacted your faith and you didn't even know that they did. Or,
that's true.
So there's definitely one person on my list who, when I was reading about them, I realized how much they impacted billions probably of Christians, and we probably don't even know it. So yeah, bit of a spoiler. Not gonna. We'll get to it when we get to it. You know,
building taste. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. No, interesting. I'm very excited about it. I feel like my list this time, 2 of mine are a lot more mainstream this time, and then 1 is nobody knows them again. But that's fine. I mean, people know them, but obviously it's not like a worldwide. Anyway. Maybe we should just get into it then, should we?
Maybe we should.
Should we just jump right in?
Let's just jump right into it.
Let's just jump into the episode. Who's going to go first? Jesse, you want to go first?
Sure, if you want. Okay. I believe last time I went in order of like oldest to youngest. I believe my first one was like Ignatius of Antioch, who was like way back in the 2nd century or something like that. I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to do most recent to least recent on my chronological list.
Ooh, maybe I should do the same. I can do the same then. I'll do the same.
Okay. All right, cool. So my very first hero, my saint, she's not a saint, maybe she's a saint, is Sister Rosetta Tharpe.
I've heard that name.
You probably have.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can't. Yeah, okay. Explain it.
So there is a great amount of debate about who was the originator, who invented rock and roll, right?
Okay. Yeah,
You didn't know
this was going. Okay.
You didn't know I was going to go this way.
No,
yeah.
I didn't. You hooked me already.
So I know about Sister Rosetta Tharpe because I listened to the fantastic history podcast, Our Fake History. And there were a two-part episode that he did years and years ago called Who Invented Rock and Roll? Now, the sort of popular theory is that rock and roll was either invented by Fats Domino or Elvis Presley. Elvis Presley was probably the first mainstream rock and roll artist. But there are a whole bunch of rock and roll artists who originated in the 40s and 50s and who kind of turned R&B and jazz into what we know today as rock and roll. Sister Rosetta Tharpe was a gospel artist. She was a singer-songwriter and African-American, and she was a gospel artist. She was born in 1915 and she died in 1973. So she kind of lived around that early period where rhythm and blues, jazz, they were the mainstream music of choice for many African-American communities and many people all around America. The sort of genres that you kind of think of as being synonymous with America. And she is widely, not widely, but by rock and roll historians, because apparently rock and roll historians are a thing, she is thought to be one of the first people to have ever played a form of music that could be likened to modern rock and roll.
Huh.
And she was a gospel artist, right? She played around in churches. Her brand of gospel was a little bit heavy, a little bit controversial for some churches. So some things never change.
True.
But so there's a couple of things there's a couple of things that really define what rock and roll is. It's distorted guitar. That's sort of the main thing. It's a rhythm and blues sort of bass line, and it's the use of percussion, right? So she did all of these things, and actually, even if she didn't create the purest form of rock and roll, she got around to America and Europe. Actually, she toured Europe in 1964 with Muddy Waters, one of the greatest rock and roll artists from the early 20th century. And she inspired Johnny Cash, Carl Perkins, Elvis Presley, Jerry Lee Lewis, Eric Clapton, Keith Richards. She had personal contact, or at least concert musical contact, with all of these and many, many, many more. And she was one of the first. It was her sound that really, really inspired many of these early artists to actually write songs in this way. And she was a Christian gospel artist. So it could be said that the originator of rock and roll was a follower of Jesus, and that she invented rock and roll playing Jesus music in church.
That
so there you
is
go.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
That is absolutely fascinating, because I think maybe if more people knew that, maybe they wouldn't have the same mindset about rock and roll.
Yeah.
So
Look, rock and roll went on to be associated with some pretty, like Little Richard was, probably one of the other ones that people really thought was like the originator. And he was a pretty filthy guy as far as his lifestyle was concerned.
Yeah.
But that people took that and they were inspired by her, Fats Domino, and many of the African American artists in the different regional centers, Memphis, Chicago, and there was one, I think, New Orleans. They were the three cities that R&B and jazz kind of blended into rock and roll in the 40s, 50s, and 60s sort of thing. So, yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, wow. There you go. That's so cool.
So sort of a sort of a subversive pick. Not like she was not like a theologian, and she wasn't like a church leader. But music is obviously such a powerful thing, and even if she wasn't the godmother of rock and roll, as she's often referred to, she has gone on to influence millions and millions of artists inside and outside the church. So I think more people should know about Sister Rosetta Tharpe. Incredible.
Yeah, that is so cool. I'm actually like blown away by that. I think I've actually listened to her music before. I'm trying to, because I've done some, it's kind of random, I've done some rock history playlists sort of things, and I'm pretty sure it came up in it.
Probably is.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. So. I love that. And that's, I think, one thing I would love to see. I think that the church should really be like where creativity blossoms the most, you know, but often we find churches becoming sort of the most draining creatively draining places, because it's like, no, you have to do it like this. This is the way, you know. Whereas, I think, you know, like we serve a creative God, a creator God. And my personal belief, I know not everybody tracks with this, I think I mentioned this before, but I believe that all creativity is given by God, but whether you choose to glorify God with it is another thing. So I think I think if more of us approached it with that mindset, that as we get creative and we can use any creativity to glorify God, I think that's kind of opens the doors to think that actually the church can be the most creative people on the world, in the world. And so that excites me. I think we were at one stage, but not anymore.
And I think the rhythm and blues and the jazz sort of scene in the early to mid 20th century is definitely evidence of that, you know, because the African American community in the United States at that time was a subjugated, didn't have civil rights and liberties the way that we kind of enjoy them today. And so a lot of that came out of their class struggle, but also their spiritual struggle as well. Because I think one of the things that got many of these people through their struggles was their faith and their sense of community, and the songs and the poems and the writings that came out of them were a result of that creativity, of, you know, wanting to be new creation, even when they felt like they weren't actually on the same level playing field as other people. So, yeah. Cool.
Yeah, wow. Oh, that's cool as. I mean, I wonder how many genres are directly created from Christian groups, because harmony itself was created in church.
For sure.
From
the Gregorian chant type.
Yeah. So in a way, there's a lot that comes from the church, just musically.
It's transferable though, isn't it though? Because like, you know, you take the mid-century, 16th, 17th century hymns that we sing today in traditional churches, and many of them are originals, but also quite a few are bar songs, popular songs that have been adapted into. So I think there's we definitely borrow, and it's very interesting. Anyway, that's just my number one. Otherwise we'll let's keep going, otherwise we won't get through it all. What's yours?
Cool. So my most recent one then, my first one is Eugene Peterson.
Beautiful.
Yeah, so he just passed away in 2018, so quite recent. And I think we did actually mention it on the podcast closer to when it happened.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he passed away October 22, 2018. So would have been actually quite close to when we recorded the first one of these, funnily enough. But he, if you don't know who Eugene Peterson is, he was an American Presbyterian minister. But he was also a scholar, a theologian, an author, and a poet. Yeah. I'm reading this off Wikipedia, but yeah, but it's just going to sum it up better than I could. So he wrote over 30 books, including Gold Medallion Book Award winner, The Message, the Bible in contemporary language. So the Message translation of the Bible, incredibly, was all written by one guy.
Yeah.
Who was also a pastor and everything. So that's just mind-bending to me that he did a whole translation of the Bible. I mean, a lot of people like to kind of make fun of the Message translation and that kind of thing. But ultimately, the fact that was written by a pastor with a pastoral heart, I don't know. I think it's just incredible. And I use the Message heaps. I love it as a translation. I find it so inspiring, and so many phrases that I've gotten from that translation that have made their way into my vocabulary, or my faith vocabulary, I guess. Like the rhythms of grace. Oof. You know what I mean? I use that all the time when I think about, like when I'm explaining something to somebody, and I'll just say, it's just part of the rhythms of grace. They're like, oh, rhythms of grace. I never thought about it. Like, got it from the Message. You know what I mean? Yeah, but I mean, he also wrote a lot of other books too that, and he's just an amazing guy, really.
Yeah, he was. Yeah. Yeah. No, Eugene Peterson, what a giant. What a giant. I don't know what could be said about that guy that, hasn't already been said by a million other people. For all the, I remember when just before he died, there was some really strange conversations that were happening around him. He was sort of changing his views on homosexuality, which was making the rounds, I remember. But I think the one thing that I've always really found comforting and sort of reassuring about him was that grace that he seemed to just espouse and to represent in himself continually. Which is such a beautiful picture of God, like in terms of what I would hope God to be like, a father like Eugene Peterson, which is what every one of us is supposed to be, striving towards, is becoming more like Christ. And I think he represented that, and he lived that in his life, imperfect as he was, in such a beautiful, graceful way. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I don't think people probably realize how much courage and boldness it takes to write and publish a translation of the Bible.
Cool, man.
Especially one as different as the Message.
Yeah.
Especially as one person. Like, that is so bold.
Yeah.
Like, would I do it? Probably not anytime soon.
I don't think I have the confidence to. Yeah, no, definitely not.
Yeah, and I just but at the same time, it's been so life-changing for so many people. Like I remember when I was working in a teen church, and there were some kids, and the only translation of the Bible they had at home was like a KJV Bible. And they were like, I don't really like the Bible. I'm not into it. I don't get it. I don't get what it's talking about. I don't get much from it. I gave them an NLT Bible. They're like, yeah, I don't know. It's a bit different. But I still just don't really get it. And so then I said, well, why don't you try reading this? And I gave them the Message. This one girl, I remember, she just started reading it every day.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And she full on had a huge turnaround because of that translation. Yeah. She then, I think it probably grew enough maturity in her to start reading and getting more from other translations after that. But that's just really where she started. And I know a lot of people who have grown up Christian, or they've grown up reading the Bible, and it's sort of all just like the language becomes so familiar that it doesn't mean as much anymore.
Yeah, it just kind of, you become numb to it.
Yeah, and so when I was at Avondale at college, I remember there were a bunch of people there who read the Message translation there for the first time, grown up Christian, but they just found a renewed passion for the Bible.
Yeah.
Just because it was like a fresh take on something that they'd read so many times before. And yeah, I just think it's such a cool contribution to the world, like the Christian world. And I think it's opened the door too for more. Like recently I've seen the Passion translation, which is I think, a similar sort of vein. It's only the New Testament at the moment, but it's, that same sort of like really getting to, okay, what's the heart of this and how would I say it in the most contemporary language possible?
Yeah. Which is a really, really great thing to do. I think, how like you admire people, but then you go, I wouldn't want to meet them, sort of thing. I think he's one of those guys that I really regret that I never had the opportunity to ever meet him. I think I would have really loved even to spend a couple minutes talking to him. I think would have been incredible. So it's very sad. Yeah,
I would have loved to see him. I don't don't really even know what he was like as a preacher, but just to see him in action would have just been awesome.
Yeah.
But there are also a couple of quotes that he had that they're kind of similar quotes, but they actually really help my understanding of Sabbath.
Okay.
So the first one is, if you don't take a Sabbath, something is wrong. You're doing too much. You're being too much in charge. You've got to quit one day a week and just watch what God is doing when you're not doing anything.
Oh.
And then the second one is a lot like it. Sabbath is that uncluttered time and space in which we distance ourselves from our own activities enough to see what God is doing.
Wow.
Yeah. And those two quotes, I don't have the reference from where they're from at the moment. I'll try and get them. But those two quotes really, they actually shifted my perception of Sabbath as a time when, even though I'm trying to limit what I'm doing, obviously it's changed again because I'm a pastor, but because Sabbath is a huge shift when you're a pastor. But I think just at the core message of the Sabbath, just the idea that I'm stepping back, but that doesn't mean God is, in a way. Like God is moving, and Sabbath is a time when I can see that more clearly because I'm doing less. I don't know. I don't know what exactly that was a shift from. Like, I can't remember the mindset before that, but I remember reading that and having a shift.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool, man.
Yeah. Okay. So I think it's from Tell It Slant, a conversation on the language of Jesus in his stories and prayers.
Cool.
So there you go.
Carpi.
Carpi, yeah, absolutely. For our mostly non-Kiwi audience, carpi means it's good.
Yeah. Whoops.
Yeah, that's all right.
Cool. Cool. All right. Happy for me to go for my number 2?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Slightly less graceful and serene. Somewhat controversial pick. My second one, second one's an Adventist, John Harvey Kellogg.
Oh, okay, yeah, I'm tracking.
So even if you're not an Adventist, you'll know who this guy is, simply for the fact that he invented cornflakes. But if you didn't know that he was an Adventist, well, he was until he wasn't. And we'll talk about that a little bit. There's a lot more history that you can go into. I'm kind of taking a little bit of what you can know about him and sharing it. There's a lot of weird stuff. He had some really great contributions to the church and the world. But he also did some stuff that was really questionable and a little bit problematic in today's era. But we'll talk about that.
I'm just laughing at your summary of someone's faith journey. It's like, he was Adventist until he wasn't. And that's it. Anyway, sorry, this is great. Great moment.
You know what? I think this guy, by the way, if you've never seen a picture of John Harvey Kellogg, do go and look it up. He is the spitting image of Colonel Sanders. I'm not even joking, which is ironic because I think he would be absolutely appalled to be compared to the logo and the founder of Kentucky Fried Chicken, given that he was such a proponent of extreme health and temperance and all that sort of stuff. So anyway, look, if you've never heard of John Harvey Kellogg, here is the quick bio. He was a doctor and a businessman, and his father became an Adventist early in the Adventist church, and his father was actually one of the men responsible for convincing James White and the early church founders to move their headquarters to Battle Creek, Michigan, USA. So he was a proponent. He established the Battle Creek Sanitarium. He also coined the term sanitarium, which I believe is sort of like a combination of like the ideas of sanitation and something else. It was to do with
aquariums.
Health. Yep, aquariums. Sanitary.
We're gonna swim in. No, I don't know.
It's to do with health and cleanliness is sort of the two ideas that kind of combined into this idea of a sanatorium or sanitarium.
I'll look it up.
All right, you do that. Yep. So he was a proponent of many, many different medical or health ventures, and people would come to his sanitarium from all around the world to get treatment. He really, really encouraged vegetarianism, temperance, sexual abstinence, and clean living. I was a bit confused. So he had, I think, 2 wives. The first wife he had like 6 kids with, and the second wife he had kids, like 11 kids with. But I think either it was his second or third wife. I was a bit confused when I was reading this before. But one of his wives, they abstained from sex even when they got married, and they slept in different rooms after they got married. I was like, if somebody wants to clear up sort of that thing, please do. But I was really confused as to sort of the thinking. Maybe it's around the ideas of divorce. I'm not too sure. Fun fact, though, he was really preoccupied with sexual abstinence. And if you don't know, cornflakes, originally he didn't invent it as a breakfast cereal. He invented it as an aphrodisiac, which is the opposite of what an aphrodisiac is.
Okay.
So masturbation was one of the things that he thought was absolutely like, this is killing our young men especially. You know, it's really bad for them. And so he invented cornflakes as a way of preventing people from masturbating, which I don't know how he thought that would happen. But whatever the thinking, whatever the reasoning, cornflakes obviously went on to become a huge hit all around America and basically paved the way for the modern breakfast cereal. I'm not sure that we would have breakfast cereal today if it wasn't for John Harvey Kellogg and cornflakes. So,
and as someone who eats, I eat muesli. Does that count as breakfast cereal? I eat it pretty much. I eat it every day. And Weet-Bix. Gluten-free.
It's very
Weet-Bix.
healthy. Very healthy. Yeah.
Love it. Just great.
So yeah, he also he had some really other good contributions to science. He was an early proponent of germ theory. So the idea that, you know, we get sick from germs and microorganisms that live in cells and all that sort of stuff. That wasn't really a known theory until his era and later on, and it wasn't really picked up. And then obviously medicine, modern vaccines and all that sort of stuff were developed as a result of this growing awareness of germ theory. And he was also one of the first to advocate for gut health and the idea that microorganisms live in our gut, and that we really have to take care of our gut as a gut biome and all that sort of stuff that people talk about today with enemas and like cleaning out and all that sort of stuff. Pretty gross stuff. Like I totally admit this is all pretty gross stuff, but he was a doctor and he was extremely experimental and he tried many different things. Some of them didn't work out, but some of them actually went on to pave the way for modern medicine today and modern health practices. But for all his positive contributions, he was not without controversy. So I'll mention one or two of them. He was an avid supporter of eugenics, which is not a very popular topic amongst many people who are Christian, because Christianity is often associated with the pro-life stance. And he was absolutely in favor of sterilization and eugenics, cleaning out humanity from people who are physically, mentally inferior. I say in very heavy quote marks, because this is his idea, not mine. He was also a little bit racist. He was not in favor of the mixing of the races and of different people from different cultural backgrounds coming together and having kids, which is definitely not something that people look on him today and go, way to go, buddy. Not very good.
Yeah, you're really making this seem like a strange choice to pick. So
my dude, I picked him because he's such a crazy guy. He contributed so much good stuff to the world, but then on the other hand, some of the other stuff that he did was really questionable. But he was a huge part of our early SDA church. People often forget that. They just think about the stuff that he did later on with his theology, but actually some of the stuff that he did do that was positive has impacted the world for a long time since. So I should also mention the main part that we associate with John Harvey Kellogg, if you're a Seventh-day Adventist, is his book, The Living Temple, where he laid out his views on panentheism, which is not pantheism. Panentheism is basically that God is in everything, whereas pantheism is that God is nature and everything is God and all that sort of stuff. Something which probably today would be taken a little bit better if worded in a different way. But eventually he was kicked out of the church. He was disfellowshipped, which is not something that happens very often, especially to somebody who was such a huge part of the early church's development. He funded a lot of stuff. He made a lot of stuff happen in the early church. He was a big ally to many of our original founders. And he ended up becoming disfellowshipped and kicked out in the end, which is quite sad. But he seemed to have a great deal of respect for Ellen White, even though he was a pretty bitter critic towards her and James White towards the end of their lives. Or Ellen White died before Kellogg died, but he seemed to have a fair bit of respect for her, even though they disagreed on many things, and they seem to have kind of still been friends, towards the end. He was the director of the sanitarium up until his death, so he stayed in Battle Creek. Oh, wow. It was a crazy guy.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of interesting. I guess it's an extreme example of the fact that even though we can have these heroes of our faith, no hero of faith is perfect.
Yeah.
And I think that's you got to accept that in a way.
Yeah. No, I will share one more thing and then I'll hand it over to you, Josh.
I do have that. Do you want me to share the meaning of sanitarium according to vocabulary.com? I couldn't find it on the official website, so I'm guessing this is... so in the past, someone who is recovering from a long-term illness might stay at a sanitarium, a special kind of hospital. Many sanitariums in the US once treated patients with tuberculosis. A sanitarium was also called a sanatorium. Even more confusingly, both words were sometimes used to mean health resort, something closer to a spa than a hospital. Before antibiotics were invented, the most effective treatment for tuberculosis and other lung disease was fresh air and healthy food at a sanitarium. The word is rooted in the Latin sanitas, meaning health.
There you go. So that's cool. And I will say, on the sanitarium part, at the sanitarium in Battle Creek, the original one, I was surprised it played host to thousands and thousands of people, some just ordinary people like you and I, but also some pretty legit celebrities of the day. When I was researching this, I found out that Amelia Earhart, the aviator, the pilot, William Howard Taft, who was a president of the United States, Henry Ford, Thomas Edison, and Irving Fisher all were patients at one point at the Battle Creek Sanitarium.
There you go.
Yeah. And did you also know that Will Durant, the famous American philosopher, considered Kellogg to be one of his greatest mentors? So this guy was like a rock star, like a legit rock star, a health and well-being rock star. So
a health and well-being rock star. Goals, man. Goals.
Even though he was kicked out of the church.
Yeah.
Poor guy. So, yeah.
Wow. That's super interesting.
Yeah. So.
Okay. Yeah, right on. No,
yeah.
Good. Interesting choice.
I know.
Okay. My next one, kind of weird, but I'm not going to give the name because it's a personal one. I don't know the family that well. I didn't get permission to share the story or anything. And I kind of decided to do this one a little bit last minute.
Do you want
it'll all make sense.
Do you want to give like a pseudonym? Okay.
What, like a fake name?
Yeah.
Nancy.
Cool.
I don't know.
Way to go. Anyway, I'm excited to hear about Nancy. Fantastic.
So when I was growing up at a church in Sydney, there was a pastor at our church and yeah, shocking, I know. But his wife he was quite a traditional sort of Adventist pastor, wore a suit and tie every week and preached on the very Adventisty sort of thing. You guys know the kind of thing I'm talking about. Not in a bad way. Great, lovely guy. But, just quite a traditional minister.
Yeah.
But his wife was really creative and she used to paint and draw. And often, this is what really set them apart as a ministry couple, is that she would paint and draw like something to accompany one of his sermons or a series of sermons. She'd produce something to visually show it, and some, beautiful pictures. And there was one she did, which I remember she did it shortly before we left, but she actually got quite sick. It was some form of cancer. And unfortunately, I don't know, this was one of the last works she ever did. And it was sort of just before we left to move away. But yeah, she did this beautiful picture of Avondale.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And if you put a black light on it, it would show all of these angels all over the picture.
Oh.
Yeah. You might have actually seen it before.
I don't know.
It's currently hanging up at Avondale.
Whereabouts?
In College Hall.
Oh, wow.
I don't know if it's still there, but but the cool thing was when I came back, so I'd left years and years later, I'd left the church for a bit, came back to the church, totally forgot about all of this. And then I came back to Avondale and I walked into College Hall and I saw the painting there this woman did from our church. And I just stood there totally gobsmacked.
Wow.
And my friends were like, what's a big deal? Like, and there wasn't any black light in the room, so you couldn't actually see, and nobody knew the thing about this painting, right? Because it wasn't displayed in a way in which it would show it off. And so I said, guys, I'll show you. Let's come back some night this week. I'm going to source a black light and I'll bring it back here and we'll sneak in. And we did. So we ended up going in there just because I wanted to show it off. And I shone the black light on and all the angels showed up on the thing. And they were like, whoa, how did you know that? And I'm like, I remember when this was done when I was a little kid. I remember the woman who did it. And I guess for me, it was just really encouraging because I think that was actually a big foundation for me of why I value creativity so much in the church, coming back to our conversation from before, because I saw how even though the pastor was just sort of doing these, traditional messages that as a kid, I didn't necessarily understand that well. I'm sure they were great messages, but at the time, at just my age, I didn't fully grasp them. But I remember the paintings and how much they meant to me every time she would unveil one and show one and paint one at church. And that one for me, because that was the last one I saw her did, but also when I came back to Avondale, I saw it there. And so it was just a huge link in my life that just all these things sort of connected together. And like creativity was a reason that I came back into the church too. So it was just a big, reminder anyway, I guess. So yeah, it was really cool. I guess some of my listeners at Avondale, I don't know if it's still there, you can let us know.
Yeah. If you're a student, go and see if you can find it. That would be epic. Send us a photo if you find it.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know, just a super touching, like obviously quite tragic. Yeah. But at the same time, really beautiful, the legacy that she left in me. And honestly, I barely knew her, but just her impact of just what she did and how she connected. Like I remember the couple were lovely and we went over to their house several times and all that kind of thing. And really beautiful people. But
I wonder, is she one of the reasons why that is sort of a practice that is done in and around Sydney and Avondale? Because like, you know, we live in New Zealand. I've been into many different churches all around Australia and New Zealand. I don't ever really see that being done, like a sermon and then like somebody doing a work of art. But it happened quite often at Avondale. I remember one of our friends, Doug, used to do that when we were at Avondale. And many other people did it. I wonder if she was one of the first people that started doing that, and people started thinking, hey, that's a great idea. We should do that in our church.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe. I have no idea, because obviously I was a kid at the time. I didn't see the scene before she came along. So,
but I mean, I haven't seen it really done anywhere else.
That's true.
Interesting.
Maybe. But yeah, so just hugely impactful and just really awesome. So anyway,
man.
Yeah, just really special.
Your picks have been really beautiful and personal. I feel really it's been awesome.
My last one isn't as much. Okay. But I'm scared the last one's the one that I'm like, oh, what if we have the same one? Anyway, let's see.
Yeah. Okay. So you've already done your Adventist one. That was your Adventist one. Hey.
Yeah, you've done your Adventist. What? Oh, did that one count as your Adventist one?
Yeah.
Kellogg?
Yeah.
Okay. I was like, are you not counting that as Adventist?
No.
Okay.
No. I'm done. Yeah. My third one is a legit saint. I picked an actual saint.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So maybe we aren't on the same one. I'll be interested to know who yours is. Okay. For my final pick, I have picked Saint Augustine of Hippo.
I was gonna pick Augustine and I changed. Okay, cool.
What made you change?
Oh, I don't know. I just was like, actually, no, this other one. I want to share more about this one.
All right.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Well,
that's
cool.
That's
so
close.
Funny. Yeah, I was like, maybe we could share about Augustine in this episode. No, I'll change it. Funny. Great.
So in your reading about Augustine, so I was actually really interested when I think Augustine of Hippo, like that's sort of the title that we often think about him. I thought, why Hippo? Is he associated with a hippo? Turns out Hippo is a place. Do you know where Hippo actually is today?
I don't.
Okay. So Hippo is now the city of, I'm going to probably butcher this, Anabar in Algeria. Just
there you go.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know anything about Algeria. I certainly have never heard of this city before, but apparently when it was in the Roman Empire, it was a city called Hippo. And he was the bishop of the city of Hippo. He was the bishop from 396 to 430. And if you don't know St. Augustine, you probably have been influenced by his theology and his thinking more than you know, because I think he's probably been one of the most influential theologians on the way that Western Christians think about the world and think about their faith than so many others. So he is often regarded, and actually in the Wikipedia profile, if you go and look at him, it will actually tell you that St. Augustine is perhaps the most significant Christian thinker after St. Paul. So that's just showing.
Big call.
Big call. Yeah. And he's most well known for two of his works, The City of God and Confessions, which both sort of give you a bit of a window into his theological thought. But he was classically trained in the Platonic sort of Greek way of thinking. And many theologians and historians today will posit that we as Christians are heavily influenced by the Platonic school of thought because of Augustine, because of his writings, because of the way that his influence really, really impacted the church. He's one of the Latin fathers of the church, so he is highly, highly regarded in the Catholic Church, and he is formally recognized as a doctor of the church, which I don't actually know what that means, but it sounds impressive.
A doctor. Yeah,
a doctor of the church.
I don't know either.
It's so strange. So more than 5 million words of his writings have survived in all the manuscripts and stuff. So he was a prolific writer, and there's a lot of copies of his books, which just shows how even popular he was even back when he was alive. Intellectually, Augustine represents the most influential, I'm reading from his bio, the most influential adaptation of the ancient Platonic tradition with Christian ideas that has ever occurred in the Latin Christian world. So he basically, what that means is the Platonic, aka Plato, the Greek philosopher, his way of thinking, his school of thought. Augustine took that was what he was raised in, and he applied that to Christianity. So he is in many ways why many Christians have a very dualistic way of thinking about the body and the soul. That work exists in St. Paul's work, but Augustine expanded that. The idea of the spirit and the flesh, very Christian, but then he took Plato's ideas of the spirit and the flesh, and he fused them together in a way that possibly Paul and the Jewish writers didn't really intend, because Paul was very much a Hebrew theologian, Jewish theologian, but Augustine takes that Greek school of thought, he applies it to Christianity, and then because of his influence, most Western Christians, whether we realize it or not, we think in that same way, for better or for worse, right? So
interesting.
Yeah, that's Augustine.
If you want, my thing about Augustine that I liked was, I guess, just his thoughts around the city of God. That was always something that I found really interesting. So essentially, as the Roman Empire was, falling apart, he was a really big thinker into, now imagine the city of God as like this separate thing that's blossoming in the midst of a real city falling apart, but then the major city, which is the city of God, is growing and flourishing. And I don't know, I think it's just a really cool way to think about, it's like the upside down kingdom within the kingdom. And that's kind of, I think he's a big originator of that thought.
And I would argue that many Christians just don't get that idea at all. Like we talk about it, we don't actually understand what it means. And that's, for me as well, is probably the most impactful of his teachings on my own ministry, is that same idea. And City of God is such a timeless classic. So if you have the time, definitely go and read it. It's great.
I haven't read it. I'm actually going to come out right out and say I've not read any of Augustine's works, but I know summaries of them, basically.
Fair enough.
But I would like to one day.
Highly recommended. I haven't read Confessions, but I've read City of God, and I read it years ago, but when I was at Avondale, actually. Great. Yeah, I used it in one of my essays, I think.
Oh, cool.
So, yes. So that's number 3. A legit saint, Saint Augustine of Hippo.
Oh, that's awesome. All right, well, my one, get ready for it. C.S. Lewis.
Josh with all the hits today. Goodness gracious.
Pretty mainstream, but I don't think that's a bad thing. We didn't talk about him in the last one. I mean, last time I talked about Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who's also quite mainstream.
Yes.
Probably not as much as C.S. Lewis. So if you don't know who C.S. Lewis was, he was around from 1898 to 1963 is when he passed away. So not as old as St. Augustine, but he was a British writer, and like a scholar, like a biblical scholar as well, like a theologian. And he was actually the cool thing about C.S. Lewis that I like is that he was really well known in academic circles.
Yes.
Period. You know, it wasn't the fact that he was he's not known in Christian academic circles. He's really well known in academic circles for his literature. And I just think that's really cool. Like being influential. I think it's a really great example of being an influence in your sphere and doing it for the gospel. And he wrote amazing books. I would love one day to say I've read the entire C.S. Lewis catalog, but I'm not there. So Screw Tape Letters, the Chronicles of Narnia. Come on.
I grew up on these.
Yeah, amazing. The Space Trilogy, have not read that. Mere Christianity is one well read in. And Miracles and the Problem of Faith. Yeah. So like particularly like Mere Christianity was quite a big one for me in my journey. And it's amazing because that book is that and Screw Tape Letters are quite like, they're like apologetics really for Christianity. And a lot of those arguments that C.S. Lewis, I don't know if he necessarily coined them or if he just popularized them. I'm not sure. But
True.
A lot of the things he presents in that book are still used today when people are defending their faith and helping others to understand God. Like the whole thing about Jesus has to have been a madman,
a liar, or the Son of God.
Yeah, a madman, a liar, or the Son of God. I'm pretty sure that's a C.S. Lewis thing. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I think it's straight from Mere Christianity.
Yeah, and people still use that all the time when they talk about Jesus. And so I think, just super impactful worldwide Christianity, but then also in his own sphere as well of English and literature. Like, I just think that's awesome. And I would like to see more Christians who are influential, like not just influential in the Christian space, but influential in whatever their sphere is. And then they can bring Christ into that. I think C.S. Lewis is a really shining example of that.
I think C.S. Lewis is also a really shining example of a modern parable writer and allegorical writer who really takes seriously the themes and the subject material of around Christianity, salvation, the problem of sin, sacrifice, all that stuff that we see in particularly The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, but also throughout the entire Chronicles of Narnia series. Probably the books that I've read the most. I think as a kid, for maybe 3, 4, 5 years, I just read them. And when I finished, I just read them again and again. I think I've read them probably 10, 15 times each, you know. But a real masterclass in modern fantasy parable writing. It has everything, you know?
Yeah.
So fantastic. Just ignited my imagination.
Wouldn't it be cool to see more of that today?
Yeah.
You know, like...
For sure.
I don't feel like a lot of... it's hard because there's a lot of... like we've talked about this before. There are movies and there are books and stuff and TV shows that come out at the moment. And you and I, we talk about it and we can see Christian themes in it.
Yes.
Are they actually meant to be allegorical like that? Or is it just a coincidence? Is it just the greatest story ever told, but like subtly coming into the mind of the writer? I don't know. I
think the problem that a lot of modern media has is either it's death by committee, you know, like made by look, collaborative creativity is great, but when it comes to, you know, editing and, you know, especially film and television, a lot of it, different people have lots of different, you know, control over the way that a story goes. But I think as well, a lot of modern writers and creators are willing to go so far in a message, but aren't willing to go the whole way. Whereas C.S. Lewis went the whole way with his message. He didn't just allude to these ideas of sin and salvation, suffering, the problem of death and all that sort of stuff that, you know, are very real problems. He tackled it head on and he addressed it in a way that he saw within the biblical framework. And a lot of modern writers, I think, are willing to they're willing to bring up the conversation, but they're not willing to have a definitive answer that the way that they see it. I think it's maybe a lack of confidence, or I don't know. But I think that's why his works stand out so much, is because he was willing to go the whole way and actually provide an explanation based on his subjective experience and research and biblical study and all that sort of stuff.
Interesting. Really interesting. I think that's really cool. So that's my one. What is it? What else is there to say about C.S. Lewis, honestly?
a once in a lifetime figure, hey. Yeah.
Well, hopefully not. Hopefully we see more, right?
Hopefully.
I mean, he was before our lifetime, so...
That's true. He died well before either of us were born, so...
Yeah. But, I think there are others who sort of follow his inspiration, but whether there are others who actually sort of reach what he is that even possible in today's society?
Is that possible? Yeah, I
like
don't know.
to think so, because I'm an optimist, but I don't know.
Yeah. Anyway.
That could be an interesting conversation for another time. But
yeah, you have given me an idea for next year's pick.
Okay. Yeah. Well, the countdown begins, ladies and gentlemen, to the 2021 Halloween special.
Yeah, I'm keen because there was somebody in C.S. Lewis's life who was decidedly against allegory, but their work has been definitely compared to C.S. Lewis's work allegorically ever since, even though he was he or she were specifically.
I the choices.
It's very transparent, isn't it?
That's all right. We'll talk about it next year.
All right.
But hey, what we would love if you guys would send us, if you can think of particular heroes, the faith to you who've passed away. We'd love it if you share it with us. Yeah, we'd love to hear about it. Or if you have any thoughts on this episode and format, we'd love to hear about it. So
next year, sorry, before you say that, I will say next year, let's try and pick some people who are still alive, perhaps.
Isn't the point of this to remember those who aren't with us anymore?
Is it? Or
that's the point of All Saints Day, was remembering past saints. You can only become a saint once you're dead.
Oh, I mean, we're not really. I mean, we're riffing on it though.
Yeah.
Does that mean that we should?
I don't know. In my mind, I'm doing this because this is my original. Maybe this is a conversation we shouldn't have while we've hit record. But
I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm derailing it.
Yeah, but in my mind, it was taking a time of the year to look back on previous, heroes of the faith.
Okay.
And people who've contributed, who are no longer here, that we can,
all right. Sorry, everybody who's alive. If you want to be on our list, you have to die. So just bear that in mind for next year.
You're the
Josh, just continue.
It is like special moment.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Well, if you want to share, we'd love to hear. So best thing, all things Burn the Haystack, best place to go is burnthehaystack.org. You can send us an email, or you can find links to connect with us on social media.
That's right. And if you want to, you don't have to, but we'd really like it if you subscribed to this podcast. I think it's a great thing to do. I think it's one of the best things that you could do today. It's definitely the best thing that you could do in the space of 10 seconds following this message. Subscribe to Burn the Haystack. And we will send you a nice cake in the mail. And if you want to go any further...
No, we won't be sending a nice cake. That is false advertising, Jesse.
If you want to go further, you can leave us a rating or review. And if you leave us a rating or a review, we will send you some prayers and well wishes that don't cost anything, but also are very helpful because it's good to pray and God hears every prayer. Okay? All right.
And maybe a nice cake.
Okay. So we're offering cake now. Okay, all right.
Only if they leave a written review.
If you leave a written review, Josh, Stothers, might send you a cake.
And maybe Jesse will too.
If you make a written review and you send us $50 and your home address, we will definitely send you a cake.
No. All right. There's no cake. I'm sorry, everyone. There's no cake. There's not even a cake.
The cake is a lie.
Leaving reviews is great. So leave reviews, talk to us, connect with us. The thing we do this because we love engaging with people. So we need engagement. So messages, email us, whatever you're going to do. We want to hear from you. Sorry, we dragged out this outro so long.
We're very lonely.
That is Josh and Jesse out.